Hello, hello. So it is Sunday, October 15th, and I read so much this past week. Quite a few books. A lot of them were really quick, like one sitting reads, but some of them weren't. So let's just get into it because it's gonna be kind of long. First up, I did read a Ghost of Fear Street book. This is the first one, Hide and Shriek. And I read this when I was younger. This is a reread for me. I haven't read it since I was like really young though. This is the first book in the Ghost of Fear Street series, and so when I was younger, in my head, the Ghost of Fear Street books were like more intense than regular Goosebumps books because they were about Fear Street, but they're not. They're just the Goosebumps version of Fear Street. Like that's what they are. But this one was fun. This is the first one. It's about this girl who moves to Fear Street, and she ends up learning that every year all the 12-year-olds play a game of hide and seek, and the person who's it is this kid who died years ago. And every year he picks a new kid to possess for a year. It's a fun time. The main plot hole that I find with this one is that if it's only 12-year-olds that play and he possesses somebody, would they not figure out, I'm spitballing here, would they not figure out that the one 13-year-old playing, because it's a whole year, is, what's his name, Pete? I'm pretty sure it's Pete. Is Pete? Would they not figure that, is that not how that would go? And if that's not the case, are there 11-year-olds playing that we don't know about? Like, it's just, that's just like the one thing. I did really enjoy rereading this one, but I was just like in my head the entire time. I was like, wait a second. But I gave it five stars anyway. They're mostly nostalgia stars, but it's a fun time. After that, I read A Tale of Two Princes by Eric Geron. This is an arc, but it came out in January. This follows two people, and one of them is the Crown Prince of Canada. You heard that right. Canada has a monarchy now. And the other one is this gay kid in Montana. And one day they're both in New York. They meet each other and they realize, hey, we look pretty similar. And the prince would like to go to this like baking thing. It was like, I will get you your Juilliard audition back if you pretend to be me. And then it turns out that they're secret twins. The thing is, this was not that good. It just wasn't. It wasn't that good. I could not stand the Montana kid at all. The prince was okay. And some of the side characters were okay, but the Montana kid, and particularly his best friend, who talked like he was a fucking like Tumblr stereotype. It was just the worst. It was the worst. It was awful. It was not good. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. Like, it wasn't like the worst of the worst, but it still was like, I was really just waiting for it to be over the entire time. It was not good. After that, I read Remember Me by Christopher Pike, which is about this girl who one day she dies. And she kind of comes back as like this ghost, and she's trying to figure out like how she was murdered, who killed her, what was going on, because people are saying that it was a suicide, but she knows that's not true. It was interesting. I actually read the second one before I read this one, which is the habit I'm trying to break. So I don't know. I think I like this one more than I like the second one, maybe, but it's still like, it was okay. Christopher Pike, for me, is at his best when he really leans into the campiness and when he doesn't lean as much into the supernatural stuff. Because Christopher Pike does, a lot of the times, he loves the supernatural shit. And I'm not all that into his, like, mystical stuff. I will say I did like the characterization of Sherry. I thought she was very distinct in a way that a lot of his characters aren't. But overall, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read one that I actually really, really enjoyed. So this is written in verse. It was another arc, but this one came out in June. It's called Wolfpack by Amelia Brunskill. This is about a group of girls who live in a cult. And one day, one of their number ends up going missing. And they're a little bit interesting in this cult because they live apart from the rest of the cult. And it's because when they were younger, one of the men in the cult was like preying on them. And so they live apart and nobody's really ever questioned that. This was really, really good. It was really, I got wrapped up in it in a way that I don't often get wrapped up in books that are written in verse, because this is written in verse, so it's a very, very quick read, because, you know, But no, it was very interesting. The back says Wilder Girls means We Were Liars. I'm not quite sure if that's a good comparison. I've read both Wilder Girls and We Were Liars. It's not really, doesn't really have much to do with either of those books. But it was a good one. And if you're looking for a good cult story or a good book written in verse, I think this is a good one to go for. I mean, it was very interesting. The one thing was that sometimes the characters I couldn't really, like, in my head, they would kind of mix together. But no, it was a really good time. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. After that, I read 2 books that are children's books, but it's like I read Goosebumps, so I read these. I read, first time I've read these. So I read this author previously when I was a child, but these books were too new, so like by the time they were coming out, I was no longer reading children's books. And now as an adult, I'm reading everything, so I read them, but my 5th graders love them. And that's the Dogman books. So I read the first one, and then also the 3rd one, A Tale of Two Kitties. One thing I'm gonna say about this one in particular, to have them fucking actually quoting A Tale of Two Cities. I don't know who these references are for. Are they for me? It's like there's no way a 5th grader understands those. I did read both of these though. What did I give them? I gave this one a 3. I gave this one a 4. So yeah, they were cute. They were funny. Still don't know about that Tale of Two Cities reference, but you know, whatever. After that, I read a romance novel, which is not my usual cup of tea. It's not usually what I'm reading, but I did enjoy this one. I'm not gonna lie, and that's Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. So this is about the main actor, one of the main actors in this fantasy television show that is coming to an end, a la Game of Thrones. So it's like an absolute trash fire at this point. It's very obviously meant to be Game of Thrones, and a woman who writes fan fiction, and she's also making cosplay. She's also plus size, she's bigger. And one day she posts a picture of a cosplay. She gets a lot of like shitty comments on it, and the actor asks her out. And it's pretty clearly like a fuck you to the haters kind of thing, but they end up really connecting, liking each other. And one thing that the actor realizes is that, because he's been writing secret fan fiction of his own show for years, and he's been friends with her on this fan fiction and on Archive of Our Own, basically. But I thought it was really fun. I thought the side characters were fun. I thought it was an interesting dynamic. I thought the writing was good. It was cute. It didn't take me too long, even though it was pretty thick. I think if you're looking for an alright romance, and this is very deeply steeped in fan culture, like maybe if you did not grow up on fanfiction.net, it might not have the same impact on you. But it was definitely, I thought it was a good time. I still don't really know about, I'm still like really dipping my toes into romance. Like I'm not very comfortable with the genre. Like I haven't read too many of them. But I think this is a solid one. I give it 4 out of 5 stars. It wasn't bad. Then I read a Sweet Valley High book, and is this one I hated? This is the one I hated so goddamn much. I read 2 this week. One of them I hated, one of them I didn't. Head Over Heels. So this is the main conflict in this one is that this guy, Bruce Patman, he's like known to be awful. He's a playboy. He doesn't really ever fall in love. He is suddenly going out with the deaf girl, Regina Morrow, and I just want to run Jessica over with a bus. And that was the case in the other book I read in the Sweet Valley High series this week too, but this one was just so much goddamn Jessica. It was so bad. It was so bad. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. The only saving grace. What was it? I don't know. Why did I give it 2 stars? Maybe because it was super, I don't know. I didn't like hate it with the power of a burning sun. It was like, 2 out of 5 stars. Awful. After that, I read a book with a group of my 5th graders. That was Replay by Sharon Creech. This was okay. It's about this kid who has a terrible family, and he's in a play. And the funniest goddamn thing about this book was that at the end of the book, literally all of his siblings get terrible injuries, like one after another. Like his brother who plays, what is it? Football? I think it's football. He breaks his leg. His sister who plays soccer dislocates her kneecap. His little brother who was in the choir falls off the stage and gets a concussion, and it was so funny. I don't remember what I gave this one. I don't know. I didn't write it because this is in my book. I don't know. It's like 3, 4 stars, something like that. I don't remember. Then I read my other Sweet Valley High book, and this one I liked marginally more than the other one. Actually, quite a bit more. Look at that. It's Lost at Sea. So in this one, there's a terrible accident when they're out on the ocean, and Jessica and Winston, who is my favorite character in this series, and I looked up the Wikipedia, and they like give you like, I looked at the characters, and it turns out he becomes a hardened, sad businessman and kills himself. So there's that. But Jessica and Winston get stuck on a deserted island, and I still can't stand Jessica, but she was like marginally more tolerable when she actually had stuff to do that wasn't just meddling, you know. And I like Winston, you know. I like Winston. One big shock in this one, because this is number 56, and there is a rough kind of continuity with these books. First of all, I was like, what the hell, where's Todd? Because Elizabeth is no longer dating Todd, she's dating like Jeffrey or something, I don't know what his name is. And the second one is apparently in between Head Over Heels and this one, somewhere along the line, Regina fucking died. And that's why I looked up, I was like, how did she die? That's why I found out Winston killed himself. She had a cocaine overdose. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. After that, back on the like shitty like 90s teen fiction, I did read Chain Letter 2, The Ancient Evil. So I read this book, first time I read this book, I was 7 years old. I was homeschooled in 2nd grade, and part of that was I would go to, my mom would do like a preschool for her mom's daycare kids, and I was too old for preschool, but I was homeschooled, so what I would do was I would go downstairs into her basement and steal fruit snacks and just binge eat them while I was reading whatever shitty 90s teen horror books my grandma had down there. And then one of them was Chain Letter 2, The Ancient Evil, which I loved. Reading this, I'm like, the main thing I remembered is that a girl got decapitated and a boy got set on fire. That's mostly what I remembered from this one. But as I read farther, I was like, oh yeah, and I was remembering more. This is super fun. I like it more than Chain Letter 1, but I think it might be like a nostalgia thing. You know, like I'm gonna reread Chain Letter 1 at one point. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I think it's super fun, and I think it's super gory. And this is the kind of Christopher Pike that I enjoy, is the Chain Letter books. All right, after that, I read another R.L. Stine. I read a Horrorland book. I read Monster Blood for breakfast, and I loved this so goddamn much. The fun thing about the Monster Blood books, okay, so the Monster Blood books are my favorite original Goosebumps series. Like I love them. I know a lot of people hate them because Evan is super annoying, but I think he's kind of fun. So this is about, like, the best way to describe this is if the Monster Blood books were written from Conan the Barbarian's perspective, because this is about this guy, and he's like, he's athletic, he does really well in school, like he's doing great, but he's got this guy who lives next door to him named Bradley, and Bradley is just awful, and it's really unknown why Bradley's allowed to keep coming into their house, because he just messes everything up all the time. And then there's Monster Blood, and the fun thing with the Monster Blood books is that, like, literally every single time the characters create their own problems. Like, there's no, like, the Monster Blood is not a real external force here. Like, they don't have to use the Monster Blood. They do not have to eat it. They don't have to do that. Like, it's not like in like the Werewolf of Fever Swamp, where there's a werewolf killing things. Like, no, you can just simply not open the can of Monster Blood. It's so goddamn funny. And it was kind of the case with this one too. I also liked how we got the Horrorland part, that Billy and Sheena Deep are there for some reason, and Billy literally does nothing useful the entire time. Like, he just kind of stands there and screams. That's all he does, which is honestly very reminiscent of Deep Trouble, where Billy also, again, never did anything useful. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I love Monster Blood so goddamn much. After that, I read volume 28 of the Inuyasha manga, which just means it's in color. I know literally nothing about Inuyasha. I never watched it, I never read it, but I will say this was relatively easy to follow, even though I just jumped in 28 volumes in. Yeah, I got nothing to say about it though. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, it was fine. After that, I did read a book that was very popular years ago. I read The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I still have the beautiful old cover. So this is, for some reason going into this, I had the impression this was going to be like this incredibly complex, like, science fiction fantasy. It's literally just a dystopian with a girl who kills people. That's what it is. That's why it was so popular in 2013. And I understand everything now. I guess not everything. What I don't understand is why people were making out that this was so goddamn complex, because it's not. It is literally just a dystopian. It's fine. It's a fine dystopian. It works. It also, at the end, it is introducing, like, a love interest who's, like, kind of was working for the man, but not really, like very typical love interest. I'm like, okay, yes, I know why this was so popular in 2013. I understand it. I get it. It was okay. It's not my favorite book. I don't really honestly even feel like unless I see books 2 through however many there were in like a thrift store or something, and I happen to be able to buy books at that point, if I'm gonna even continue the series, you know, like it was fine. I don't really feel the need to continue the series. I don't really care all that much for any. David was interesting, I guess. Other than David, though, I'm like, I don't know, nobody. I give it 3.75 out of 5 stars. It was fine. That's all I gotta say about it. And then finally, I read a book on my Kindle. That is Carson Clare's Trail Guide to Avoiding Death by Bruce and Carson McCandless, which is just a bunch of little poems for middle schoolers about stuff like bullies and Australia. It's just dumb little stuff. It was cute. It was fine. I think I gave it like 3 stars. I don't know. Currently, I'm reading Henry IV. This is a Norton Critical Edition, so I am finished with the play and I'm deep in the trenches of the essays. So that's where we're at there. So these are the books I read this past week. That is all for today. I will talk to you later and goodbye. Expect a lot next week too, because we have a 4-day weekend. So that'll be great for me and my book wall, honestly.